Hello everyone. So this is going to be a tutorial on setting up an LOD system inside of Unity. I'm sure some of you have heard of LOD before, maybe never worked with any kind of LOD system in a game or anything. So LOD is an acronym and it stands for level of detail. So I think a picture would probably describe this best, and this is just a picture I found on Google. So these are level of details. They're each a separate 3D model. You have a very high LOD, high polygon density, a medium range density, and then a very low one. Usually there's about 3 LODs. Some games have upwards of 9 levels of detail for meshes in their game. I worked on a few Need for Speed games for the Nintendo DS, and we relied on LODs heavily for all of the AI vehicles and some of the props and a lot of the buildings that you would see in a city. And it allowed us to, like on a very limited platform like the Nintendo DS, it allowed us to make a pretty expansive city that you could drive from one end to the other, and it would take a little while to get there. And that was because first off, we were culling out a lot of meshes that weren't being rendered by the camera, and the other thing was is when something was really far away, we were swapping out to a lower resolution mesh or a medium resolution mesh. That's what an LOD system does. It says, like, if this coffee cup right here was sitting on a table in a game and you were in a room and you were sitting at the table looking, and the player camera is right there at the table, you would want to be using this really high detailed mesh, your highest LOD. Player stands up, camera starts moving away from the table, about a medium distance. You swap out to this medium resolution cup here, and then the player gets really far away from the table. You swap out to this really low res mesh, but you never see the difference because by the time you walk far enough away from the table, this cup starts looking like a little teeny tiny, 15 or 20 pixel tall blob on the table. So there's no reason to have all of these polys being pushed through at that point for something so far away. So we're in Unity here, and got an empty project, and I've just got the layout set up to 2x3 how I like it, and I believe in here 1 column layout. I don't like having the favorites panel on there. It's just too much. I have my console showing in my game window undocked. You'll see the dark skin because I'm in a Windows Pro version of Unity. So in the video description, in this video, there's a Dropbox link in there to download the LOD models you need. It's like a 100 KB zip file. Just click on that link and grab the 3D models real quick, or if you have a few LODs of your own, you can use those. So I'm just going to import in that exact package, LOD models package. When you download it from Dropbox, wherever it goes, just grab it. I'm going to hit open, and we're just bringing in, if I click the button, bringing in the models. It has material and all that with it. So, okay, to start this tutorial off, I'm just going to drag the FBX file in the scene, and just like our image here, this is a coffee cup. Okay. First thing I want to do on this is I don't want to do any changes to the actual model or anything, so I'm going to go Game Object, Break Prefab Instance, and I'm going to left mouse drag these, delete the root container, and this way I can manipulate them and look at them. First thing we want to do here is we can't really see them very well, so we're going to go Game Object, Create Other, a Directional Light. Let's put some shadows on that guy. Let's set the bias to like 0.2. Why not make them high res? Okay. Now, we don't have a camera in the scene by default. We should have. I'm going to hit this little gear. I'm going to hit reset. Reset the camera. What I'm going to do is hold down Control, and I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees like that. I'm going to back it up, pull it up, and if you're on local, you want to go to global. And basically, I just want to get a good view of the cup. I'm going to go File, Save Scene As, and we'll call this LOD Demo, and hit Save. This way, if we lose anything, if something goes wrong, we can see what's going on in our scene. So what we have here is cup high, and I'm going to go textured wire. Okay, cup low, and then cup medium. So what we have here is a relatively dense, highest resolution, high, LOD, a medium resolution LOD, and then a pretty low one. So I'm going to Control Z back and get them all in there. So what we need to do with this LOD system is you're going to create like an LOD group. So you're going to go Game Object, create empty, go to little gear, reset it, and we'll call this LOD group 1. If you want to call it something more specific so you know exactly what it's for, you can just put cups or something like that in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag all the LODs into that, and now we have an LOD group. Okay, so I'm going to go create folder. We're going to write scripts. I'm going to go create JavaScript, and we will call this LOD control. Now on our LOD group, we would drag LOD control over to it and basically apply that script onto the root LOD group. All the LOD meshes we need are inside of that group. Now, for example, if these were cars, like I have these car packs, I sell 3 or 4 LODs for them, you would put each of the car LOD meshes inside that car group. Okay, so let's double click this script and start typing the script out. This is not a very long script to write out, so should go pretty quick and should have you rocking and rolling with LODs in your scene in no time. Okay, so MonoDevelop's opening up any day now. Okay, so not really going to go into teaching scripting heavily, but we'll touch on some things here. So basically what we want to do here before we have any functions starting or anything is we want to declare a couple of variables, 2 of them actually. The first variable that we want to declare in our Unity script here is going to be a set of ranges for distance, and that's how LODs work. So the camera is 0 to 5 meters away from the cup, then it's the highest LOD. And if it's more than 5 meters away, then it's the medium LOD. And if it's more than 10 meters away from it, then we go to the really low poly LOD. So it's just based on a distance. So the first one will be a public var variable, and we'll just call it distance, if I can type, ranges. It's going to be a type of float, and it will be an array of floats. So i.e., if we hit Control S and save and go back, we'll see one float value here. Well, that's not going to work because we have several different numbers we need to say. Well, if the camera is 1 unit away, 10 units away, 15. So one float value is not going to work for us. That's where the array came in. So now when I hit Control S and save, we have a set of ranges we can do. So we do like 2 or 3, and then we can type in these values in here, 25, 12, 25, when they happen. You know, we're not going to put anything in there just yet. But now we have our distance ranges. The second variable and last one we need, it's actually going to be one that references all of our actual 3D meshes. So we'll call this one LOD Models. And really, we just need the game object. And it's going to be an array too, because there's more than one 3D mesh. There's actually a... how did I already have errors? Oh, I just came off of doing quite a bit of C# scripting. So I go back and forth on Unity script and C#. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. And so in this array here, we know for certain we have 3 models. And the way that this system is going to be set up is highest LOD to lowest. So we want to go high, medium, and then low. We want to go highest resolution, medium resolution, low resolution. So we want to comment that too. Assign the 3D meshes from highest poly count to lowest poly count. Okay. One moment. Okay, so that's our variables, and now we just need one that's not public. Public, by the way, means that it shows up in the inspector here, but sometimes you have values or variables that you don't want anyone to mess with or tweak, and those are called private versus public. Just wrote with private instead of public, and then it's hidden. So we just want to set a private var current, and we'll make it -2. Okay. So that's it for the variables that we need. Now in our start function, this start function is unlike update. Update runs every single frame of your game. So it's good for things like moving things or moving the camera or checking for input. But start only occurs when the scene starts. When I hit this play button and it's done compiling, when we're actually playing, that's scene start. That script start function is called. So we want to do something up front. And this is going to be a for loop. You can look up on Unity's documentation on for loops. They're just basically looping routines that kind of go through in a couple of events and set some variables or access variables, and then they determine have we met a certain condition, and when we have, they do something. If we haven't, then they continually loop on themselves over and over. So I'll explain it here in a little bit more detail as soon as I type this out. Okay, so the for loop now, okay, we've met our condition. This is what we want to do if it is met. Set active recursively false. Okay, so what's going on here is the for loop is just kind of looping through, and it's going through all the LOD models that you possibly set. You could have 2 in there, you could have 8 in there. So we need the for loop because we don't have a set amount of 3D mesh models that this script can know for certain ahead of time. So we do a for loop to go through them, set a temporary integer value called I, and we just say, well, okay, so we've got this int I and it equals 0 right now. As long as this integer I is less than the length of the amount of models in there. Length is a property of an array, which these little brackets make this an array. So it's just saying the length of it. How many things are in the slot? We have 3 in here. Okay, oh, typo, LOD models. So it's saying as long as that temporary variable is less than the length in that array, it's less than the amount, then I++, which just means add 1 to this temporary integer value. So you can see here, the for loop is just going to keep cycling up, counting up to 1 until finally it hits, in our case, 3, because we have 3 models in there. And then once it does that, that basically finds, it loops through this whole array and finds every model. Make sure it always finds every one. Then it says, let's take each one out of it. I represents the integer. It basically represents each individual mesh in the array. Set them all to false, which set active recursively false is just a way to set a game object type. In children, recursively means going into a container like this and looking recursively through everything that's in that container. Set them all false. Okay, turn them off basically. So let's hit play and see what happens. Exactly what I thought would happen. All of them are turned off. Okay, they're basically inactive here, turned off even though the mesh render is still on there. The game object is deactivated. It's not active in our scene at all. It's not rendering, it's not being processed, etc., etc. So Now we've established finding all of our game objects, LOD models in start. Let's move into something that we want to process down here every single frame. So we're going to set some temporary variables. Okay, and I'll explain it in a moment. Position, transform position. Okay. Okay, so var d and var level here are temporary variables that we're creating and using within the update function every frame. So vector3 distance, a vector3 is just 3 points in world space. Kind of like a transform has an x, a y position, and a z. It's a value on each axis. Vector3 is the vector for each axis. Distance is just an internal thing that Unity uses for the vector3 that'll determine a distance between our camera's transform position, okay, where the camera is in the scene with the play or whatever, versus the distance between this LOD group, its transform. Okay? Var level one is just an internal variable that we're using to just calculate what level we're at. So we're going to go through and you'll see another for loop. I equals 0. I is less than distance ranges dot length. We've seen this before again. I plus plus. Okay, so that's like the for loop at the top. Except in this for loop and update, we're going through all the different ranges, the possible ranges, like 5 meters out, 10 meters out, 20 units out. So now we're looping through all those distance ranges versus looping through the models. And we want to say, once we've went through all of them, if that temporary variable, the distance variable d, is less than distance ranges I, then we want to put some brackets down here and do something. So we're basically saying if that temporary distance that we're getting between the camera and the LOD group is less than looping through all of the different distances in that array for distances, which is right here, these values we haven't set yet, then do something in here. It's going to keep looping through until that condition's met. Set the level to the temporary I variable. And I, we're going to actually set that to something. If I could type here, distance ranges dot length, and then remove some of these gnarly empty spaces. Okay. We still want to check, so basically that's going through our temporary distance less than the amount of the distance ranges, the individual ones in here. The I represents each individual range. Then set level to I, a temporary variable, and then say that I equals the length of that array. Okay, so we went through it, we've set it. So here's where we're going to check that temporary level variable. If level equal to -1, then some brackets because we want to do something. Then level equals distance ranges dot length. Okay. Oh, nope, semicolon. I'll indent that. And then we'll say, this is basically just saying if it's equal to -1, then the level actually equals identical to the array of distance ranges in there, so we're not going to do any LOD swapping in that case. But then we're going to ask below if the current does not equal the level, then we want to swap LODs. So we're going to make a function in here, change LOD to the level, because we've been looping through the levels, so we know what LOD mesh is that level. Change LOD, yeah. Okay, so those are the two checks. And then actually the very last thing we want to do here is this function here that we're calling. We want to go down here and add a custom function, and we're going to pass that function the level. This change LOD, you can see inside of the curve little braces here that we're actually sending in a value for which LOD level it is. So we go LOD models from our group of models that we actually have to work with. The level, which one it is, and which one it is out of that array. Set active. Oh, what happened? Redo? Yeah. Set active recursively. True. So what that's doing is it's taking that one LOD level that it's determined is the proper one based on the distance, and it's saying set that one true. Turn it on. Okay? So if current is greater than or equal to 0, let's do something inside of the brackets. LOD, I think I can copy and paste here. So I'm going to select that line, copy paste. We want to turn it to current, and this is going to turn off the others. This is going to make sure the others are turned off, and this one's set active true. And then down here we just want to say current is going to equal level. It's going to equal that LOD. So we remove some extra gaps. Control S. Okay, obviously we're missing. Silly me, we are missing. Where did it find that? Levels. That's because our variable, that's a typo, it's called level, not levels. Okay, so we're all set. Now our script should actually start working for our LODs. Now we need to set up these distance ranges, but we need to know a size for this array. Okay? We need to set these distance ranges to be one less than the amount of the LOD models we have. Because basically if you're farther than this farthest distance, we're always going to use the lowest res mesh. So really we only need to check the distances for the highest and the medium. The low will always happen after that. So we have 3 objects in here. Our array will be set to 2. We should probably comment that in here. So we should say, code commenting requires /. Set the number of distance ranges to be one less than the amount of LODs you assign. Farthest LOD will always be automatic after farthest distance. I guess that makes sense. Nice special note there. Okay, so we want to say anything farther than 10 units away, 10 meters. Camera is going to be moved. Let me reset the position. Okay. Let's see where we're at. 5? Okay, so we're 5. So anything further than 10 units will swap to the medium mesh, and anything further than 20 will swap to the low res. Let's test this out and hit play. Okay. Oh, we have a problem. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. Camera main. Oh, that's because my camera is not tagged main camera. Now, we could We could get around that by creating a variable up here to assign a camera. Like we could do this, public var player camera, make it a type of camera, hit Control C, and just take camera main and do that, and hit Control, paste that in, and then hit Control S to save. And this way, it won't matter if your camera is tagged camera main or not. Like, we can just untag it to show that working. And it allows you to just assign the camera to the LOD group. The great thing about using the camera main option is that it will automatically find and assign any camera tagged main into the LOD group. So let's go and try it out. So our camera's really close to the cup. So we're seeing the high-res cup. Do you have wireframe on? The high-res cup is the one visible. So it should be that when we back up beyond 10 units out with the camera, because right now I think we're only 3, it'll swap to the medium. And there we go. Magic. It's voodoo sorcery. Pretty cool, right? And then according to this, the distance we set, if we go further than 20 meters out with the camera away from this cup, it should swap to the low one. Yep, there we go. And that's how it works. And then you can have like a super low detailed cup out here. One of the things too on this rough cruddy model I have, you just want to make sure, is you can see a little bit of the transition happening there. And that's just because some of the shading, the normals on the rim of the cup. On the low one, I should have probably hardened the edges on the lip of the cup just to keep the shading. See how they're hardened on that lowest LOD, but they're soft on that? You got to make sure those things kind of match up. So how does this benefit performance like in your mobile games? So say we're at the highest LOD here. We'll look at the stats and we'll say, all right, so we're drawing 1.7K tries, 1.2K verts. Okay, that's pretty dense. I don't want to keep drawing that many tries and verts when I'm like 20 feet away. And so as we go down, look at that. When we hit the medium cup and then we go back up, we go from like 2,000 tries to 700 tries. And then when we walk really far away from it, we go to 300 tries. So you kind of get the idea of, like, imagine if this was a race car and you're going, and the building's super small, so it doesn't need any detail, and it's only drawing like 200 tries for that building. And as you get closer, it says, we'll swap in and draw a little more details in the windows and doors. And then as you're driving right up on it and by it, let's show it with all the details and like little handles and things like that. So this is really important for in car games for like your, especially if like, say this cup in this LOD group. And also, forget about like moving the camera. This LOD group could be an AI vehicle, and so the AI vehicle's right there close to your camera, but he starts taking off and he's whooping your butt basically. And the further he gets away, we swap to his lower LOD versions of his car, right? That's exactly what we did in Need for Speed. So on the DS, we would have the AI car when it was right here and you were bumping his bumper. This was I believe, a 1200 triangle car. And then as he took off and got away from you and he got, 50 to 100 feet in front of you, he swapped down to like a 500 triangle car. And then when he got far in the distance and you could see just a dot on the track, he turned into like a 80 triangle vehicle. So it's not necessarily always moving the camera. We put our LOD groups in Need for Speed on the cars. Like this was on the actual car controller thing. We put the cars all inside of it and set our LOD group, and it works great. So hopefully that gives you guys a really good idea of how to set up and use LOD groups, especially in your mobile games. It's not as important in some of the higher end consoles, but definitely important in mobile. So I hope this helped you all, and the next tutorial I'm going to do is going to be how to set up and use an existing culling system, so like culling things based on distances. So that should be really helpful for mobile too.